A black Delta State, Mississippi university student was found hanging from a tree, and the police ruled it as a suicide. Tyrone Bowman live. We're going to talk about this tonight. The more things change, the more they remain the same. And according to CNN, and I'm going to read this story from several sources here tonight, and I'm going to give commentary and analysis about it, because something does not pass the smell test. According to CNN, quote, the death of a black student found hanging on Delta State University's campus in Mississippi has been ruled a suicide, the county coroner said Thursday. The body of Demar Travian Trey Reed, who was 21, was found Monday morning hanging from a tree near the university's pickleball courts campus, Police Chief Michael Peeler announced earlier this week. The incident raised questions by loved ones and led the university president to acknowledge that the scene and image could be upsetting to some students given the history of racial violence in the Jim Crow South. You don't think? Listen, ladies and gentlemen. This is a young man. I want you to look at him very well. A young man down in Delta, Mississippi. And you're trying to make us believe because a county state coroner ruled it as a suicide and the police ruled it as a suicide. He was found with a noose hung around his neck, hanging from a tree, reminiscent of being lynched in the Deep South. Warning, this conversation may upset some of you on tonight. That is the disclaimer. You're trying to make us believe that this bright, young, intelligent man, a young man, decided to commit suicide. You want us to believe that he tied the noose, he got up to the tree, and he hung himself. And the fact that they hastily ruled it as a suicide, that means that there is a cover-up that's going on. And the people that are involved are the usual suspects. And we're not going to stand for it, and we're not going to believe it. Down in Mississippi, they have been notorious for lynching black people. Remember Byrd down in Mississippi? Remember Emmett Till down in Money, Mississippi? Remember the movie Mississippi Burning? Mississippi is notorious for doing stuff like this. And the school president, according to this article as written by CNN, quote, the incident raised questions by loved ones and led the university president to acknowledge that the scene and image could be upsetting to some students given the history of racial violence in the Jim Crow South. The South is still racist. All investigative material in the active case has been turned over to the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office for review, according to a Thursday news release from the Cleveland Police Department. Because you can't trust the local police, you can't trust the local coroner's office, you can't trust anybody down there to conduct a thorough, independent investigation. Quote, I condemn the rumors circulating regarding his death, Mississippi Department of Public Health Commissioner Sean Tyndall said in the news release. Authorities have previously said no foul play was suspected in the death. I don't believe a word of what you're saying. You can condemn the rumors all you want. They're not rumors. A young man was murdered. He was lynched. He was hung. You can condemn it all you want. You all trying to save face. It was down in Mississippi that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated on a balcony, April 4th, 1968. Which I still don't understand to this day. Where were the police? Where was the protection for Dr. King during that time? Where were his bodyguards? Just because the authorities said there was no foul play, the family is not going to believe that they were rightfully so upset about it. Quote, based on the preliminary examination, we can confirm that the deceased did not suffer any lacerations, contusions, compound fractures, broken bones, or injuries consistent with an assault, said Bolivar County Coroner Ralph Rudy Seals Jr. in a written statement earlier this week. I don't believe a word of what you're saying. There's a massive cover-up going on. There are videos, and they are in the hands. Wait a minute, hold on here. There are videos, and they are in the hands of the investigative team, Peeler said. Delta State President Dan Ennis asked for calm as the investigation continued. Man, you can forget about that. A young mother is grieving, a family is upset, and you want people to remain calm. He understands why people want immediate answers. We recognize that this is not only about the facts, Ennis said, it's about emotions and it's about feelings and the way this loss and how it was discovered affects people's lives. Loss, it's more than a loss. Family members of Reed retained civil rights attorney Ben Crump. His office announced Tuesday, you darn right they got attorney Ben Crump on this case because something stinks already. Because you all came to a quick conclusion. And you all are basically indicating to say that the young man committed suicide based upon what? What evidence do you all have that there was an alleged suicide that took place? You said there were no lacerations, there were no contusions, etc. So how could you conclude through the country coroner that a suicide took place? Isn't that what police are always quick to say about black people? They committed suicide. She committed suicide. When it comes to a white person, you all don't want to believe that suicide could be the issue. You want to conduct a complete and thorough and exhaustive investigation. No stone can be unturned. The whole country got to be upset. The whole nation has got to be turned upside down to find out exactly what is to alleged to have happened. When it comes to a black person's life, all of a sudden, okay, they committed suicide. That's the end of the case. Case is closed. It's not going to go away. Quote, we cannot accept vague conclusions when so many questions remain. Attorney Crump said in a statement, I stand with his family and I will lead a team of civil rights leaders and organizations in pursuing transparency and answer for Trey's family. Crump is demanding all video footage related the death investigation be shown to the family. The family will commission its own independent autopsy, Crump said, to be paid for by the Autopsy Initiative, part of the Know Your Rights Camp organization founded by former NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick, now an activist. Quote, Trey's death invoked the collective memory of a community that has suffered a historic wound over many, many years and many, many deaths, Crump said in a statement released Friday. Peace will come only by getting to the truth. Delta State is in Cleveland, a northwestern Mississippi town about 115 miles from Memphis, Tennessee. Its enrollment last year was 2,654 students, the university reported, nearly 43% of whom were black. Figures for this academic year have not yet been released. Since the news of Reed's death became widely spread on social media, Ennis said the campus has increased law enforcement presence in response to threats. Well, why didn't you all have a law enforcement present before all this went down? People are upset. Black students don't feel safe. They don't feel protected. They enrolled in the university to learn. not to come back in a body bag. And this is why a lot of people get upset when people like me have to report things and just talk about it straightforward without a chaser. There's something sinister going on here. And somebody is protecting somebody's. And a massive cover up is going on, and they're going to get to the bottom of it no matter where it leads to. An event celebrating the 100th anniversary of the university scheduled for Monday was canceled after Reed's remains were discovered. Ennis, who is white, said he understands why the circumstances of Reed's death are especially troubling to many students. You don't say, partner. Quote, I admit that I'm not adequate to speak to the imagery that this incident raises and acknowledge my weakness in that regard. Close quote, he said. Family members said Tuesday that Reed was excited about his future and they had seen no signs to cause concern. When he went back to Delta State University, he was a fun-loving person. And our question is, what happened? Said family attorney Vanessa J. Jones, according to CNN affiliate WHBQ. Yeah, what did happen? All types of clues are there. There's no such thing as a perfect crime scene. There is none. When, what, where, who, how, and why. What went down? The call for more extensive investigation was echoed by a member of Congress who represents the area. Quote, we must leave no stone unturned in the search for answers, Democratic Rep. Benny Thompson wrote Tuesday demanding a federal investigation. While the death of this case are still emerging, we cannot ignore Mississippi's painful history of lynching and racial violence against African Americans, end quote. That is the truth. You can't deny it. You can't run from your past. That's why Money, Mississippi is nothing but a remnant of the past. Don't nobody want to live in that hick town. That little raggedy store is nothing but a shack. The lake in the river where they threw Emmett Till's body after he was savagely beaten to death. And when his mother, Mamie, finally got his body back to Chicago, and she demanded and had an open casket funeral for her son, covered by Jet and Ebony magazines, because she wanted the whole world to see what racial bigotry and prejudice and violence did to her son. Before the young man died, he was savagely beaten and mutilated to no end, and then thrown into the river like he was a piece of garbage. And you want Black America to forget our history? We're never going to forget our history. We're never going to forget Jim Crow. We're never going to forget segregation. We're never going to forget slavery. Isn't it ironic they're always telling Black people, get over it? It's the past. But they don't tell any other ethnic group to get over it. They don't tell them it was the past. They build shrines, have holy pilgrimages, build nations to honor those who suffered. But when it comes to our people, you want us to forget about the Black Holocaust? Never. We will never forget it. The stories will continuously be told. You can eradicate it from your white history books all you want, but we will tell the truth. Because I know the stories. I was raised by people who came from the deep racist South. And used to sit us around the table and tell us about Jim Crow. Tell us about the lynchings. Tell us about the murders. Stay away from white women. No matter what they tell you, leave them alone. You all, listen, you can love whoever you want to love, and you can marry whoever you want to marry, whatever. But the one thing that you better realize, you better know your history. You can marry into whatever family you want to. You're still only related to the family by marriage. There's no blood connection except through children. That's it. Don't forsake your heritage. Jewish people don't forsake their heritage. Asian people don't forsake their heritage. Japanese and Chinese people don't forsake their heritage. Irish people don't forsake their heritage. Swedish people don't forsake their heritage. Afrikaners don't forsake their heritage. Black people are the only people who want to try to eradicate and erase their own heritage. What's wrong with you? Are you stupid? You never forget the price that your ancestors paid during the Middle Passage and the Dark Voyage, and they dropped them off in Jamaica and Barbados and all the other islands around the world. How do you think the slaves got there? They dropped them off there before they came finally to America. This young man did not hang himself. There is no plausibility factor that even indicates what the coroner said is true. The coroner is a liar. He was told to wrap it up, and you better make it look like it was a suicide. According to the article, Trump is requesting that the Trump administration open a federal investigation into Reed's death. The administration confirmed that it had received Thompson's request, but has not yet responded to it. Thompson Press Secretary Yasmin Brown told CNN on Wednesday. A decade ago, federal agents investigated the death of, listen, Otis Bird, a 54-year-old black man found hanging from a tree in rural Claiborne County, Mississippi. The Justice Department closed the case in 2015 after determining there was no evidence to prove that Bird's death was a homicide. Reed's remains were discovered only hours before another Mississippi resident was found hung more than 1,000 miles away. Was that a suicide too? All these hangings are popping up throughout the South all of a sudden. Throughout the South, strange fruit. Remember Billie Holiday's song, Strange Fruit? It's just happening all of a sudden throughout the South, trying to invoke and strike fear into the hearts of black people all over again. Stay in your place. Shut your mouth. You better not get out and vote during the midterm elections, because that could be you hanging from the tree next. So this is where we're at in America now. This is what it's coming to. Listen up, black people. This is not a time to rest. This is not a time to placate. This is not a time to be pretentious and think that everything is all right when everything is not all right. Don't think that because you have a bachelor's or master's or doctorate or 2 or 3 or 4, and you live in the upper echelon part of the neighborhood and you have what they consider a good job and you speak properly and you married someone outside of your race and all of your friends are of a certain ethnicity, don't you think that you have arrived. You better remember who you are in this land. And that's why an independent investigation must be done. You cannot trust anything that any of these people are going to say. The body of Corey Ducatus was found in Vicksburg Monday morning, according to the Vicksburg Post. The death of Zucatus, a 35-year-old white man, was not believed to be connected to the Reed case, Police Chief Larry Burns told the newspaper. How do you know? The police are not forensic pathologists. They're cops. Before the shocking death at Delta State and reports of threats directed at the school, Purely said students on campus are safe. This is an isolated incident. Here they go with this crap again. Like people always saying, this could never happen in our neighborhood. Why, we're just shocked. This has never happened before, not here in this gated community. We have the HMO, the Homeowners Association. Well, we're deeply appalled and highly offended that in our close-knit community that such a thing like this could happen. Really? There's a correction to this article. It says, quote, an earlier version of this story misstated the total number of students enrolled at Delta State University in 2024. It was 2,654. You know, this is not right. There's something going on here. And people can pretend that everything is all right if they want to. Now, according to the Marshall Project, listen to this. Quote, for more information, you can go to the marshallproject.org. The headline says, tree hanging death at Delta State University raises dread of Mississippi's past lynchings. A black freshman's apparent suicide on campus is one of at least 9 black men who have been found hanging from trees since 2000. So you're trying to make us believe that all these are isolated incidents. He's a freshman at a state university just starting his collegiate career, and all of a sudden he committed suicide. You want us to believe that? You want us to believe he was depressed, upset, worried, that he went out and bought some rope, measured the rope up to the tree? That's what you want us to believe? Got on the ladder, tied the rope into a knot that only a professional could turn it into, and he hung himself. That's what you want us to believe. Something doesn't pass the smell test right here. Something just doesn't pass the smell test. And some of you can live in a vacuum if you choose to. You want to live in a bubble? That's your prerogative. But I have to live in a place of reality. You know, America is not a Cinderella story. America is not a Mickey Mouse Disneyland fantasy with Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. There's a lot that goes on in America. Quote, southern trees bear strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root, black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees, end quote. Those are the words and lyrics from Strange Fruit, recorded in 1939 by jazz singer Billie Lady Day Holiday. In the heart of the Mississippi farmland, where cotton plantations once drove the slave economy, the recent news of a black student found hanged from a tree on the campus of Delta State University invokes stark images of the state's post-Civil War history of public lynchings. The September 15 death of 21-year-old DeMar Tavion Trey Reed has been ruled a suicide by local officials, but Reed's mother, Sophia, and other family members dispute that finding. They, along with community members, claimed at a rally on campus October 18 that Reed's body showed signs of physical injuries that could not have been self-inflicted. The results of a second independent autopsy requested by the family and paid for by an outside foundation have not been publicly released. Quote, Trey Reed was lynched here just over a month ago. Crystal Muhammad, national chair of the National Black Panther Party, said at the rally, the NBPP is not concerned with the Black Panther Party of the 1960s. We're here for justice for Trey Reed, end quote. Since 2000, in addition to Reed, at least 8 black men have been found hanging from trees in Mississippi. According to a review of past news stories, all of the deaths were ruled suicides. Parents, listen up and listen up well. You better think twice before allowing your students to go down to these southern universities where they're far away from home. And it doesn't matter how much they talk, how much they try to show you the beautiful brochures, how much they try to convince you that this is my life, I'm going to be safe. You need to really think that position before you give them that permission, because you know about the Deep South. They don't know. All they know is they want what they want when they want it. All they know is they want to be where their friends are, where they can party and laugh and talk and do all the things that they want to do, but many times they're void of reality. They're void of the historical significance from the past that entangles the future, because the future and the past are continuously intertwined, because we're very reminiscent in today's world of what our ancestors and predecessors before us had to live with and die for. Every gains that has been made on the civil rights era has been stripped with so-called reverse racism. And this is why, if you're going to be politicians and you're going to occupy the office and black people put you in office, you better darn well fight for the issues and causation of black people. They're not sending you to Washington to vote along the status quo and hobnob and smoke and drink cognac and smoke cigars and tell filthy, dirty jokes and go along with the status quo. They're electing you to higher office to represent your constituency in the interests of your people. Every other politician fights for the interests of their people, but black politicians will say, well, I'm not just here for black people, I'm here for all people. Well, it was black people that put you there. Never forget that, sir or madam. You better remember that, because a new generation of voices are rising up, and we will call you out on your mess. This is not a game. The future lives of our children are at stake. The future lives of our grandchildren are at stake in generations to come. Don't just think about yourself. Think about those who have to come behind you. And that's what a lot of folks don't want to do. They're only concerned about themselves and what they can get for right now. That's why generational wealth is so important. What are you going to have for the next generation who comes behind you? We are tired of being in poverty-stricken places. The majority of us who were born, and I have a lot of friends from all walks of life, all colors, creeds, faith, ethnicities, and etc., who come from poverty-stricken backgrounds, and they don't want that for their family. And that's why you cannot be beguiled by the propaganda that the news media continues to spread night and day and day. The midterm elections are coming up. Get your head out of the sand. Get your head in the game. If you don't want to go to the voting lines, go online like I did and request a ballot, fill it out, mail it back in. Now that'll solve that problem. Early voting has already begun. You don't have to stand out in the long lines. Go online to do it. Why do you think they try to discourage you from going online? Because they know once you go online, it's safe and it's secure. And that's it. You don't have to stand out in the hot, sweltering heat and be discriminated against and spit on and all that kind of foolishness. Just do early voting. On Monday's show, if we don't get snowed out, if I'm here in the studio, I'm going to do a story. And we're going to show you statistically, let me give you a statistical analysis, commentary, and breakdown of how many black people voted for Trump in this past election. And it is shocking. It is shocking. Are you happy? And don't be trying to tell me, oh, well, this is exactly what we voted for. You're a liar. This is not exactly what you voted for. So this young man is dead. And they want to cover it up because they don't want to deal with it. It's easy for them to pretend that it's a suicide instead of dealing with the reality of what actually happened. Mississippi and the South's deadly racism inspired the protest lyrics of Strange Fruit, which described a time when lynching or the hanging of black men, women, and even children was common in the South. During the post-slavery era known as Jim Crow, black people were reminded constantly that they were less than white, less than human. Reed's death has become a stark reminder of those times and a fear that those times never truly disappear. And let me say something to my quote unquote religious brothers and sisters in the world of Christendom. Don't you think because you sing all your praise songs and do your praise dances and have your crusades and your conferences and quote your Bibles verses all the time, don't you think that you're not going to be affected by what's going on in this country? Stop living in a religious vacuum and wake the heck up. I wanted to say something else, but wake up before it is too late. America can be a wonderful place to live for all. Let me just say this for the record because, when crime statistics are made available, and I'm going to make them available, people try to marginalize. It's just the blacks. It's the blacks that are committing all the crimes. Really? You really think so? Wait until I do that special and give you actual data and statistical evidence. You got bad people in every race, in every ethnicity that commit horrendous and horrible crimes. Look at the young man who assassinated and murdered the former CEO of United Healthcare, and he had 24 charges thrown out because he comes from a wealthy family, and he's mad and raising hell because he has to stand trial for murder. No accountability. Come from that privileged two-tier type of family, the affluent family. And he doesn't want to be held accountable for his actions. Reed died the same week right-wing activist Kirk was assassinated while speaking at Utah Valley University. I remember the day that when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and I think I was on the air for maybe 2 or more hours. And I said then, and I say now, what happened that day should have never happened. Regardless of what his political beliefs were and what his personal ideologies were, what happened should never happen. And I asked a sensible question no one has been able to answer. When you had a high profile individual like Charlie Kirk representing a vast majority of MAGA, where was his security at? Where was his security detail that day? Why was he allowed to be out in the open air and no one dealt with the perimeter and scoped it before he came on the campus that day? Are you trying to convince us that the individual that they have was up there all that time and nobody could see him up there? Well, that's something that has to be disputed. Unless you can come with some verifiable facts, I can't even respond to it. Regardless of what he believed, he didn't deserve to die like that. And that's the bottom line. and Utah Valley University will never be the same. And after that, there were anonymous threats against historically black colleges and universities across the nation, because initially they said a black person did it without any scintilla of evidence, no leads, no clues. The MAGA Republicans were out there castrating, viscerating the Democrats, calling them every kind of name, and they said it was a Democrat. It was a black Democrat that did it. They were throwing all type of spurious accusations out there. And then when they found out that it wasn't a black person, and that the person wasn't a Democrat, they shut the hell up. And none of the threats were reported at Delta State, a school of about 2,600 students, where about 40% of the students are black. On the same day as Reed's death, a 35-year-old white man was found hanging from a tree about 100 miles south of the Delta State campus. It's the same thing. A white man's found hanging. What did they rule it? You heard nothing about it. I didn't hear the coroner said it was a suicide. There's something going on down there in Mississippi that ain't right. Trey's death was ruled a suicide, and there have been no calls for additional investigations. There was no known connection between the two hangings other than that both happened on the same day. That is not happenstance, ladies and gentlemen. That is not by accident. To make it appear like it was not a racial incident. For Black Mississippians, a tree hanging can trigger the stories of racial horrors passed down through generations. The shared history continues to shape how people of color, quote unquote, perceive themselves and their safety. The violence of the Reconstruction era and the struggle for civil rights have led to skepticism of local institutions and authorities chronicled over the decades by Mississippian and Black journalist Ida B. Wells, the NAACP, and other organizations. There were at least 581 lynchings in Mississippi from 1882 through 1968. The most of any state. According to the NAACP, a lynching is a public killing done outside the justice system, usually by a mob that was often aided or ignored by authorities. Nearly all the victims were Black. Tree hangings were frequently used to send a message of terror to the Black community. No, let's tell it the way it was. The lynchings occurred by the KKK. And the KKK members were the farmers, the doctors, the lawyers, the preachers, the judges, the police, and etc. Quote, we know a lot more about triggering now, much more than we used to, said Michael Forrester, emeritus professor of social work at the University of Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg. Even seemingly minor events can trigger someone who has either directly or indirectly experienced trauma. You don't need somebody with a PhD to tell you what's going on. It is obvious there's a problem. It's obvious there's something going on. Wilhelmina Scott is a Black woman who grew up in the Mississippi Delta. Her father, Ed Scott, was a well-respected catfish farmer who opened the state's first Black-owned catfish processing plant in Mississippi because white processors refused to do business with him because of his race. Listen, Reed's death at Delta State in Cleveland, in the heart of the Mississippi River flood pain, brought back memories to 77-year-old Scott White and others like her who grew up Black in the South. In her book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, America's Legacy of Enduring Injury and Healing, quote, close quote. Black researcher Joy D. Gurry wrote that the legacy of multi-generational trauma is often passed to new generations. Parents passing stories and behaviors onto their children are key ways the trauma remains fresh, said DeGroot, who holds a doctorate in social work and is a past assistant professor at Portland State University School of Social Work. She now has the nonprofit Be the Healing. All right, doctor, let me holler at you for a minute, respectfully. How are our people going to know about the past if you don't tell them about it? What do you think Passover is about? Passover was instituted biblically as a reminder to the children of Israel how the angel of death passed over their house as it came through the land of Egypt to kill all the enemies of Yahweh, Jehovah, Adonai, Elohim. Passover. What do you think the Ten Commandments is about? The movie that the late Charleston Heston starred in, a Passover. Each part of the meal is symbolic of the bondage of slavery that the Israelites suffered at the hands of the Egyptians. That's called history. What do you think Hanukkah is about? Understand why each candle is lit. People will observe Hanukkah, but when you talk about Kwanzaa, they get upset. The word Easter is not even a biblical term. It was inserted into scripture by the translators who took the word Passover out and inserted Easter. Know your history. And in closing, Reed's death sparked national news coverage and a slew of speculation on social media. A TikTok post that garnered more than 20,000 likes questioned the investigation's transparency. Ashley the Barones is a Black woman with nearly 700,000 followers and who describes herself as History Exposed, Tenured Truth. She said in a September 19th post that, quote, when a Black man is found hanging from a tree in Mississippi, I flinch because that is not just history, that is memory, end quote. For 28-year-old Evan Smith, who grew up in Hattiesburg in Mississippi's Pine Belt, it's hard to believe a young man would choose death by hanging. Smith said that although he loves the state, he is aware of its history, past and recent, of violent racism. He said the state's Jim Crow history was often discussed by family members when he was growing up. See, you can't negate it. I'm not telling you don't live in Mississippi, but know Mississippi's history. I know the history of my city where I live and all the things that have happened, and I'm still learning stuff about it. Know who you are. Because when you know who you are, no matter where you go, you will never lose your true self-identity because it's deeply embedded with the subconsciousness of your mind and your soul. And then you can grow healthy and live a productive life, irregardless of what ethnicity you marry into. Know who you are. Share cultural heritage. Cultural differences should be shared and explored and talked about. They have to get to the bottom of what happened here, or else this story will never die. This is something that individuals need to know and need to be talked about forthright. Parents, have a talk with your children. Don't let them get caught up in all the glare and the sparks and what they see on TikTok and Instagram and all these other things, thinking that that is the world of reality, and it's not. In many instances, it's a pure world of fantasy. And then when they get out into the real world, they find out that because you come from a cloistered, sheltered background that did not prepare you for the real world, you don't know how to handle institutionalized racism. You don't know how to handle bigotry and bigots and racists when you come in contact with them. In a world that constantly says yes and you never hear the word no, individuals don't know how to understand that no matter how intelligent you are, no matter how well spoken you are, no matter how educated you are, no matter what your background is, you're going to be measured by the pigmentation and color of your skin in this world. And that's a fact. Never surrender. Never quit.